All right. Welcome to day 30. We are at the midway point for the full 60-day cycle. So this is it's a time to celebrate because if you're on here, then you've made it halfway. Good job. Good job. Oh. So I see Angie says you're listening in today. You're 4 today, however, you've lost the past 2 days. All right. Good to note. I have been at the same. I've been holding steady for the last few days since Thanksgiving. But I feel everything calming down, which is what we need in our bodies. So how about the rest of us? Let's go ahead and check in on how you did yesterday, scale of 1 to 5. Kristen, you're just in time to check in. Good to see you.
Good morning.
So you can post it in chat. So Pam, I'm so used to seeing Zoom user and associating that with Pam. And so I have to be mindful of that because that might get me in trouble with other people when they have Zoom user. I might accidentally call them Pam because now I associate that with you. Oh, all right. Kristen has a 4 and Keshi has a 4.5. Okay. All right. Would love for the rest of you to check in. So Irma, 3.5 timing was off. So, this is something that I've thought often, but I've never really brought it up until now. But we all have our different views of what a 5 is. So I'm just curious, what does a 5 mean to you? And what would be considered, you rating yourself down to a 3, for example? What would be the qualifications for you to scale down on your rating? So let's just do a check-in on that. And Kristen, what would you say is a 5? What does 5 look like to you?
For me, 5 is only eating foods on the plan, so not eating anything off plan, getting all my water, and getting some movement.
Okay.
And so if I'm missing any of those, then I would rate myself lower.
All right. Jennifer, how about you? What does 5 look like for you?
A 5 would be, I agree with Kristen, all the right foods, no cheats, no snack, not even a bite. Timing within that 2, I always try to do the 3 hours, so a 3-hour timing, and then like it's the same, the water, the movement, just precise, that seems like really perfect. It'd be 5.
Anybody else have a thought about what 5 looks like to you? Something that hasn't been said already. Is there something else that constitutes a 5?
I think I would add just real quick, I think a 5 would also be like mentally a 5. Like, I did it, I can do it, I did it, I feel good about it. I'm not like feeling deprived or something. So it's a mental success, I think, as well.
Yeah, like a strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So Nkeshi is saying how I feel emotionally, and then Pam says timing, water, meals, eating clean. So if you were to, let's just do a little bit of quizzing here. If you were to be off on timings, what would you rate yourself?
That's the 3.5.
3 point. Yes.
Because for me, my timing was really, really off. I was like between one meal was like about 5 hours. So to me, that's significant.
Okay. Gotcha. What about somebody else? What would you rate yourself if you were off on timings?
I think
I
for
think-
me,
Go ahead.
I would
Yep.
just say timing for me probably wouldn't be as low as not eating right. Like that seems like if I'm hungry, I'm not going to be miserable. I'm going to eat something, but if I eat a blueberry instead of a cookie, like that's going to be better. So to me, timing doesn't seem to be as much of an issue as the food that I would choose.
Yeah, I would typically say that timings, if you're off on your timings, that would constitute more of a 4. Unless it's grossly off on the timings, like you were, I mean, it was 5 or 6 hours later, right? And you had to shift your whole meal plan. Now, what if you missed a meal? If you missed a meal, what would you rate yourself?
A 3.
Anybody else agree with that?
I see in catchies and it's making me smile. I would say a 4. I would, in my mind, less food is better than wrong food or more food. So I would probably still only give myself a 4 if I missed a meal.
Okay. So it also depends on what meal it is. So when you're missing a meal on the short term, it looks like a win, but in the long term, it's actually it's not a win because our body thinks that we're starving it. And so if we miss a meal, then it's going to come back around to collect, I guess is the way to say it. So that's actually it's a major thing. And I'd probably rate that more of a 3.5 under the 4. Pam, did you have a thought?
No, I'm just, I had said 3, but okay.
I mean, it could be a 3 or a 3.5, and it does depend on the meal. So if it's one of your staple meals, like your dinner or your lunch, if you were to miss that, that's pretty significant. It's pretty low. Okay, so what if you were to have a small cheat? Let's say that you ate a spoonful of dessert or you had a few crackers. What would you rate yourself for that?
Maybe a 4.
Okay, so we have 4. Anybody have something different?
I think it depends on when you do it too.
Okay.
I would rate myself a 3.5 if I had a cheat because it feels like it's opening the door to negotiation, to rationale, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's in there in between 3.5 and 4 in my book because you are opening yourself up and it is going slightly off plan. It might not have, it depends on what you're eating too. If it's sugar, remember sugar is like crack. So if you're cheating with sugar, that's definitely, if you're having a spoonful of ice cream, for example, I would say that's down to a 3.5 because you just added that sugar, that addictive chemical to your body, and now it's going to be harder for your fight. Your body's going to be a little bit more stressed because it's like, oh, sugar, give me more, right? Okay, so what if you have a meal where you just eat completely off plan? What would you call
A 0?
it?
A day or a meal? One meal, maybe, I don't know, a 2. I mean, that just seems like it wrecks the whole thing, you know, like.
Anybody else have thoughts? All right, so Jennifer's saying a 2.
I'll say a 3.
Okay.
But like when I say like yesterday, when I said my timing was off, by the time I got to eat dinner, it was like 8 o'clock. To me, that's, you know, that's pretty late because I'm going to bed around 10. So I know it's not enough time in between. And when you look at maybe eating off plan at that time, it's it could be a 2.5, 3. I don't know.
Well, on the timings, you need at least 2 hours from the time that you ate to bedtime. You need at least those 2 hours for everything still be kosher. In terms of going completely off plan for a meal, I would agree with Jennifer. That's a 2. And then what would you constitute as a 1?
I'd say more than one of any of the things we've talked about. So like some combination of you go off plan, timings off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you
No
have-
water. Yeah, no water, no exercise.
Yeah.
No, so also if you go on a binge, like you just kind of lose it, right? That's you falling off the wagon, and it puts a serious kink in your plan. So I just wanted to call that out because as we rate ourselves, we want to make sure that we're rating ourselves on the same or very similar type of scale as we go through this journey. So some people might have a 4 and it just means different things to different people. And now that we've talked about this, we have an idea of how to calibrate our score. So I wanted to follow up from yesterday. We had some really good conversation about our needs. And I'll put that visual back up. That's what we're working on this week. We're digging into this. So let me pull this up here. Let's see. Actually, I'll pull it up. I posted it in the Facebook group yesterday. Where are all my buttons? Okay. So let me go ahead and share. All right, there we go. So yesterday we started our discussion and playing around with some questions. What do you believe about this need? Actually, this need. What's important to you about it? What happens if that need isn't met? What do you do? So I wanted you to do some reflection on that and think about that, not just from a food perspective, but your life as a whole, how these are impacting you. So I want to open it up to see if anybody took some time to reflect on this, and if so, what came up for you? You have something?
So yesterday when we talked a little bit and I had said boundaries slash control, well, it is, and you corrected me by saying, yeah, it's more control. And that's true. Yesterday I had no control over the mechanical issues with my car. And when they told me the issue with my car, then I was really kind of out of control because I wasn't prepared for my car to be a goner.
Yeah.
It's a 13-year-old car, but still, it's my little car that got me around town. And now it's like, oh man, I need to buy. I don't need to. My husband wants me to buy another car, and
Mhm.
I don't. And I don't because I do have a car to drive. And in my mind, it's for me, for him, he wants me to do that. I don't need to do that. So right now I'm out of balance, out of control with
Mhm.
this decision, you know? So,
Yeah, and so what impact does that have on you in the other areas of your life?
well, that's what kind of took me off of plan yesterday in terms of um, timing, food timing.
Yeah.
My choices weren't that bad, but my timing was definitely off. I did manage to walk around the block, get my mile in, but I didn't drink as much water. So it just, and when I got on the scale this morning, it was up just a little, but you know, but all of that I think had a factor.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So when I hear you talking, you went through this situation with the car yesterday and you you felt out of control about what was happening, but you actually squished all of that energy to gaining some control even by holding back what your husband thinks that you should do. You're like, no, I don't need to do this now. So you were trying to take control in some other area.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and this is a good example of, if you can just imagine suppression. When we're experiencing feelings or we're not getting our needs met or we feel like there's a deficit, there's a lot of feelings that come up, and many times we try to just squish that down. We try to suppress that. Man, Moody Radio is right on my line of thinking this week because I turned on the radio when I got in my truck and they were talking about, they were giving an analogy of having a beach ball and trying to shove that beach ball underwater and, just to control, play with it and control with it. But ultimately what happens is you're going to be in the water and that beach ball is going to come back up somewhere else, right? Especially if you let it go. And so our emotions and our needs, it's the same way. So if we're trying to suppress ourselves in one area, it's going to come out some other way. It's going to manifest some other way, and it manifests in power and energy. So that's why I talk to you often about practicing the law of replacement, knowing that when something is taken away, you've got to replace it. It's going to be replaced one way or another, whether you manage that or you let it manage you. And so when people tend to binge or overeat, our whole experience with food, a lot of times we'll go into binges or we'll jump off plan because we're trying to suppress in one area and it's just got to be expressed some other way. So I want to open it up for comments on that.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me. Just when if I'm trying to get something done and I can't get it done, the one thing I can do is eat.
Right.
And it's like I'm not getting the satisfaction of accomplishment in my goal. And for whatever reason, like now that makes sense because for whatever reason, eating chips feels better. But it's because I'm doing something. Like I can't for whatever, whatever's stopping me from getting the thing done that I really need to be doing. There's the replacement, eating a chip. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, at the same time, let's think about this. Does it really make sense when we say, oh, I don't have power and control in this situation, so I'm going to eat, which is actually, even though we subconsciously we think, oh, that's controlling something, it's actually letting go of control even more.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that that happens, but it doesn't make any sense at all because it just makes everything worse.
Right. Yeah. So anybody else have thoughts? Anybody give some thought to what we talked about yesterday?
This is definitely, it's such a powerful conversation. This is kind of, I feel like I paint myself into this corner every time I'm working through trying to get healthy, trying to shift my lifestyle. I feel like I kind of hit this tipping point of rebellion, self-sabotage. Like I feel out of control in one area, so I try to get control in a different area, or I just like shut off my brain. And because for me, eating, the logic of it doesn't make sense, but there's just this part of like I'm tired of thinking hard, working hard, staying in control. Forget it. I'm just forget it. And um and so I feel like this is where I get every time, and then I can't see what's on the other side of this. And so I'm really thankful for this conversation, and I'm also like, so what's the answer?
That's a great question. And how do you experience freedom when you feel so bound up?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that you can do is start to ask, well, okay, what exactly does freedom look like? If
Yeah.
I mean, even just taking your situation where all of us have been, maybe even this past week, we've been this way where we have so many things going on and we feel like we're juggling them and we have to be strong. And it just hurts our head to be thinking about it anymore. What's the answer? Let's open that up. What's the answer for that?
Freedom is responsibility and freedom is choice. And reframing, we have choice. It's our choice. We are not bound up. We do have, we are, we make our decisions.
Yeah, that's
And
a great point because really it's a mindset challenge.
mhm, it is.
We're looking at our circumstances and we're making them more palpable than they really are. It's the way that we're viewing the circumstances that makes the difference. So it requires a mind shift, a perspective shift for one thing. That's one thing that it requires.
One thing that I have had a counselor many years say to me ago when I was trying to make a decision, and it really helped to get outside yourself and pretend you're someone else. Pretend you're your daughter. What would you recommend your daughter do?
Yeah.
I tell you what, I knew the answer right away. I knew the answer right away.
Yeah. A lot of times when I'm coaching people, when they're so stuck in their view of something, that's exactly what I do. I tell them, okay, step outside yourself and just imagine that you're a fly on the wall watching this happen. what are you seeing, and what would you advise that person to do, right? So you're making them get out of that mindset. In Keshi, I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was saying that this is really good. I was just thinking about like control and, a few years ago, especially I would say during the pandemic when things just felt out of control,
Yeah.
for myself. And I just had to really focus on like the serenity prayer. And I think it still works for me now, just like you were saying and others were saying, just stepping aside from things, not feeling I have to control my circumstances or even allow my circumstances to control me. Because
Right.
then in that case, then I'm going to go, like you were saying, eating the, DoorDash or doing these things that were out of control. So for me, it's like taking a pause
Yeah.
and acknowledging how I feel and allowing those feelings to pass. Because it's like water. They just, they pass away. You don't have to act in that emotion and, oh, I got to eat this now and I have to have this now. And just kind of just taking that control back of having that freedom, saying, hey, if I do this toxic cycle, I'm going to continue to be in this toxic cycle. So that's what's worked for me. So
I want to say ding, ding, ding. You have the right answer, because one of the most powerful ways that we can actually be in control is to put the pause on and be sitting with what's going on and switching from that, oh my God, I got to do something about it right now mindset to let me notice what's going on. I like to say it's like when you're driving your car, you're just slipping into neutral. You're not driving somewhere. You're not feeling like you have to take 25 action steps right now. It's really about stepping outside and say, okay, let me think about what's going on here. Let me do some observations. What do I notice about this situation? Not just externally what's going on. I notice that my husband is being a jerk face right now, right? I mean, we're moving beyond that. We can notice those things too, but what do you notice about yourself? And it's the behavior that we're not used to practicing, but it's one of the most valuable behaviors that you can take on to start paying attention to questions like, what is it that I really want in this situation? I want control, right? I mean, so we'll just go with the control need there. I want control. All right. So what are the ways that I'm going to get control? What's the way that I have tried to get control and it's backfired? It hasn't worked for me. So it's looking at things very honestly and say, eating and binging has not actually given me control. That backfires. So you basically have to interrupt yourself. You have to interrupt yourself. And it's okay to be in a state of contemplation. It's okay to be in a place where, you know what, I don't have to make this decision right now. I haven't said this out loud, but I have really been working on a couple of the relationship levers here, the understanding and the help in my personal life. So normally my life is consumed with work, the VIP center, church related thing. I mean, I'm all about the Lord's mission, but I have a mission at home too. And the truth is it's been a season where my mission at home has fell to the wayside because our life is riddled with swim meets and taking Mackenzie here or there and just constant going and passing each other by. And I felt like I was slipping out of Mackenzie's life. And I finally came to, okay, what do I need to sit with this for a minute. I need to sit with this and think about stopping this cycle of this passing by and quit looking for control in other areas. How do I become understanding and how do I help? because I knew I needed to insert myself back into the lives of my family. And so I did some very simple things. I made conscious choices to stop working so late or working when I got home. And my husband needed help with some of the responsibilities that we have as swim parents. You know, before he was trying to shove it down my throat and make me do it, I didn't want to do it because he was telling me he wanted me to do it. So my rebel was popping up like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. But I put myself in a place of understanding. And I put myself in a place of help. And I jumped right in and I identified 3 different dates that I was going to help and be a volunteer at the swim meet so that we could get credits, right? I did my first one last weekend and it was fabulous. I loved it. And I could just see a change in the countenance of my family members, right? So I made a choice to do so instead of going in the mindset of, oh no, I'm gonna honor my time. I'm gonna sit in the stands and just watch the swim meet. I went from that perspective to, no, I want to be able to help because I want my family to grow closer together. It's changing the mindset that you have, recognizing that the mindset that you've been using all this time, it doesn't work. It does not work. That means that you have to find a new mindset. Any thoughts, comments about what I'm saying?
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think in the interrupting and noticing, I actually was given like a set of prompts that someone else gave me that's kind of a reflection. And so I'm going to post that in the Facebook group if anybody needs or wants something to kind of guide a reflection. I just had the aha as you were saying that of like, oh, I do have this. This is the right time to use it. Here it is. So thank you so much. This has been so good.
Well, I'm wondering if you have those prompts, would you be willing to share those tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Good, good, good. We'll look forward to it. Other thoughts? Anybody else have some things that are coming up for you in this conversation?
So you mentioned last week something about gray rock.
Yeah.
So how do we get, part of the interruption is getting to the gray rock, not responding emotionally.
Right.
And I'm identifying, like yesterday, I ended up vacuuming and carpet cleaning both rooms that I thought I was going to have help doing. And I had to step back, breathe, and go, just try to do it. Don't get upset. Don't be angry with someone else. And it worked because I stopped, I paused, I come to understanding this other person was in pain, and I stopped that getting angry, being angry because I was wanting this done, been a certain time to do it, and not able to financially delegate it to someone outside. So, and I was able to physically do it, which was amazing.
Yeah.
It took me 2 hours, but I did it. And I did it. But I did identify that I was being angry for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
I was understanding. I was like, wait a minute, this person is in pain.
So what I love about that is that you recognize, I mean, you can't control other people, you can only control yourself. And you even, if I look at our needs wheel here, if you can just imagine that each one of these is a different perspective. It's a different lens. And so when the original plan didn't work out, instead of, trying to beat that person over the head because they didn't value the same thing you did, or they weren't experiencing what you were experiencing, you actually chose a different perspective, right? So it could have been, you took control of that situation. It could be that you're looking at this as an adventure, from an adventure perspective or a success perspective. I mean, you could take any one of these and replace that mindset that wanted to kick in, that typically kicks in.
Yeah. Because it's a value thing. It was a value thing. It was a sense of urgency. It was my sense of urgency.
Yeah.
It was my sense of urgency. And so what was good about it was I was able to do it. Because
Yeah.
I started it not knowing if I could finish it. But saying to myself, if I'll do as much as I can do. I was also good, kind of like kind to myself too. It's like, it's okay if you can't do it all.
Right.
Do what you can. And then it felt good that I could. And then I rested. And then I went on to help 2 other people that evening. So it, but I stop and pause. Yeah.
Good. Fantastic. So it's 8:37 and we've gone over. So here's what I'm going to ask you to continue to do. I want you to think about everything that we've talked about today. We've been talking about what happens when we suppress something, or we suppress a need, or we suppress our feelings around a need. You're thinking about, what happens to that energy or that power, because there's energy that's produced when you're doing that. I mean, just imagine the beach ball thing. You're trying to hold it under. That beach ball is going to come up one way or another. It's not going to stay under. It's going to land somewhere else. And so where do you need to interrupt an old mindset and shift to noticing? And so what is the new mindset that you want to take on? So Pam, that was a great example of just doing that, just practicing that, and also recognizing that not everybody thinks like me. It's not everybody's number one priority to get the carpet done. Right? Yeah, you had certain things that you wanted to accomplish with that. And so you actually took that on yourself, and there was some reward in it. So you purposely shifted the way that you were looking at that situation. So we'll continue to talk about that. And I want you to think about, maybe there is one of these perspectives that you could take on. So play with the perspectives. And we are going to play with perspectives tomorrow. And we'll have Kristen share those prompts that she got. So that will be some helpful tooling for us. All right. All right. Anybody have anything else before we jump off today?
Thank you. It's been very helpful, insightful.
This is the deep work that we really have to do. It's the deep work that we're not used to doing, but it's very needful, especially in the journey that we're in. All right, ladies, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right.